Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I don't know whether to sigh as kind of a sigh. What a weird game. A game that ended on a high, but wasn't a very good game, especially the second half. I would say that Dr Tottenham saw Wolves on Saturday evening and looked like he was treating them, only to whip away the bulk of the medicine just before it was about to do its job. Death, taxes, and Tottenham generously ending a visitor's winless streak are pretty much among the certainties in life, aren't they? They really are. I must apologise actually from the off if I look absolutely knackered and have red eyes. This could be one of my latest filmings of a video just because I've done my work finally after a stupidly late Saturday night kickoff. But I just wanted to get this video out there early in the morning. It's not really that long before it's going to go live now, which tells you how late this is. And there's a very real chance that at some point I may just nod off. You can join me, I'm sure many people do when they listen to my voice, but I have done that. I have genuinely many a time been working away on the laptop and have just kind of fallen asleep. I have no idea I've done it until I kind of go like that and I see a line of like Zs, which is quite ironic, or something that I've pressed a key and just fallen asleep on. Hey, it's part of the fun, part of the fun. But look, hopefully I get through this. I may not know that I fell asleep during it until I look at it in the morning, or people tell me in the comments. You may well say I fell asleep anyway just to fool me. But yeah, Dr. Tottenham, the whole thing, we know it. We've been there. This is the thing. We went to this game, especially as media as well, regular media attendees of Tottenham matches, knowing that this was going to be a tough game, despite the fact that Wolves were bottom of the Premier League, hadn't even drawn a single game, hadn't got a point from their 5 matches this season. Yet they come to Tottenham, and you just know they're a team that have given Spurs problems over the years. I think we've said this in previous videos. It was one of those games that was never going to be definite, but Tottenham still should have put it away. Absolutely should. But you just know, if you're a manager of Tottenham Hotspur, if you're a manager in the dugout, at whether it's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, whether it is Wembley during that period there, whether it's White Hart Lane, you just know there will be 2, 3, 4, maybe more instances when Spurs have lost a match on paper at home against a team in dire straits. Sorry, they've lost a match that they shouldn't have lost on paper. They didn't actually play the match on paper. That would be weird. They played it on grass. They're just this walking paradox, Tottenham Hotspur. In European competition, we said it in a previous video after the Villarreal game, they've not lost in 21 matches at home and they've won 17 of those games in Europe. Yet in the Premier League, some might argue because the games are tougher, Tottenham have triumphed in just 3 of their past 17 matches at home. It's just mad, absolutely mad. It's an abysmal record for a stadium, what is it, 62,850 seater stadium that has been built to be a fortress, not a place filled with kind of groans, moans, and boos. That's not what it's meant to be. It is meant to be the place where teams fear to tread. Not Tottenham, opposition teams fear to tread. On Saturday night, I'm referring to it as Saturday night because I'm way into Sunday by this point. There was 60,537 fans packed inside the stadium, that huge arena on Tottenham High Road, and they got 2 very different halves of football for their money. The first period at least brought some creativity at moments and chances. I felt like social media at half-time was a little bit down on the first 45 minutes. Yeah, it wasn't amazing, but I actually thought they created enough little opportunities that they should have probably been a goal or 2 up, and I think they score a goal or 2, or even just 1 goal. I think that first half, I think it changes the complexion of the game. I think Wolves have to come out, and I think everything's different. But it's football; it didn't work that way. We had Mohamed Kudus heads the ball towards goal from Xavi's deep cross, heads it. Johnson tips it onto the crossbar. Probably Kudus should have done better for my liking on that. Do you know what? It was the 7th time that he has hit the woodwork since the start of last season, which is more than any other player in the Premier League. Little stat for you. Then we had I think it was Destiny Doggy made a really great break down the left-hand side, got the ball into, I think it was deflected, but it got to Bergvall inside the box. He fluffed an attempt at a volley. That was a decent chance. Kudus came inside, forced Johnson into a flying save. I think there was another opportunity when Richarlison, the ball was swung in and Richarlison was like inches away from just getting a touch on it at home. And I feel like there was other little moments where they tried shots that they shouldn't have tried, and they tried to get the ball across in positions where they shouldn't have. Lots of just little bad decisions made in key moments, really. But then right at the end of the half, last kick of the game, the returning former Spur, Matt Doherty, had a volley that hits the top of the crossbar. It was a warning that should have been heeded. It's Tottenham. It was not. So, what's that? A warning? No, thank you. My goodness. 9 minutes was all it was after the break. Spurs caught with a sucker punch. Vicario, I actually thought he reacted quite well to the header. I'm going to pronounce this. Ladislav Krečki, I'm going to go for, from a corner, but he could only kind of push it out to João Paulinho. The ball bounced against him, came back to Santiago Bueno to poke home. And it just knocked all of the stuffing out of Spurs. Any kind of momentum they tried to be building in the first half just went full. And the whole stadium atmosphere went, it was just rubbish. It was just pretty awful until the 94th minute. Spurs just wasted possession constantly. Even though you had Thomas Frank, you could see him down there. He was yelling at them. It's like, be patient, just don't rush. He was doing this constantly, trying to tell them. Again, they did not listen. They didn't listen to him. What they weirdly did listen to was every time the crowd just went, shoo, every time they were anywhere within about 35 yards of the goal, they heard that and cue a string of rubbish efforts. Let's just call them rubbish efforts from distance that were in more danger of knocking someone out at the top of the south stand than it was to causing any trouble to Sam Johnson. But I think probably just as Thomas Frank was as frustrated as he could be, so 2 of his 5 changes suddenly worked. Because his other substitutions hadn't. Brennan Johnson, Pedro Porro offered nothing more down the right than the players they replaced. Wilson Odobert was as much use as a dunked rich tea biscuit. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. You know my feelings upon Wilson Odobert and how much better he can be than he is. But my goodness, there's so much to his game that is lovely. But there's also so much kind of almost like a weakness to his game at times when he just allows himself to be dominated by the fullback, when he's got the ability to make sure that doesn't happen. And this was one of those games where he just kept running into players and not really doing anything with the ball. But 2 of the subs did make a difference ultimately, and they were Matisse Tell and Pat Matassar, who I guess they were there for Frank's SOS, Thomas Frank's SOS, which is save our substitutions, because they did. Odobert just gave the ball off to Tell. Tell was very direct and positive, flicked the ball inside, past the defender, cut inside, curls a low ball into the box. It kind of Sarr cushions it back out, and there is Paulinho to just, he doesn't even miss a beat. He kind of hits this beautiful curling strike into the bottom right corner. It was an absolute beauty of a goal. He went mad, whipped off his shirt, ran to the corner of like the east and the south stand, roaring at everyone, flexing his muscles and all of that sort of stuff. And I mean, it was his 3rd goal in 6 starts in all competitions since the Premier League season began. And it's not bad for a defensive midfielder. You know, I said it in the last video or the one before, because I know I did that little mini update video. He has got to be up there with the bargain of the season. He really has. I think, though, in his whole euphoria, and especially the way he spoke after the game, I think he kind of forgot that it was just 1-1. He was so excited at the goal that, you know, suddenly I think it dawned on him, maybe there's a minute or 2 left here. We could maybe win this. Brennan Johnson definitely did it. Brennan Johnson got the ball out of the goal and started shouting at him to, like, get back, kind of get your shirt on, man. He got the obligatory yellow card, which just is the thing right now. You'd think after Ekitike, everyone would be like, might not do that. But no, it's the passion of the moment. I do get it. I understand it. But they didn't look like getting another goal, Spurs. They looked disjointed again, this kind of 3-4-3 formation. They ended the game with Porro as the right-sided centre-back, and who do we have? Johnson and Odebear as almost like wing-backs in the four in the middle. Yeah, you could say it didn't work, but then I guess they got a leveller while in that formation. Yeah, I mean, overall, it was yet another far from impressive Premier League performance at home. Probably Burnley aside, isn't it, this season? Of course, we've already said it's 17 games. It's a far longer stretch than just the Thomas Frank era. It's like a mentality issue now within that stadium, which is not good. Your own stadium should not be a place you fear to go yourself. You should not be happier going on the road to try and get victories. But look, it is a positive certainly that again they've come back to grab points in matches that they've not played particularly well in. I think it's a good indicator of the team spirit, but it is also a good indicator, I think, that Thomas Frank's team is very much still in the formative stage. It is in the making. And he agreed with that assessment. He said, yeah, you can say that. I think that's probably fair. I think the first half was good. I was happy with that in many ways. I felt we were on top, created 2 or 3 very good chances, and got into a lot of dangerous situations where we didn't create a chance, where we should have created more. You're thinking, yeah, this is very good, produce a lot of crosses and we're on track. But football is not like Wolves, please roll over. It is a Premier League and it's extremely competitive. So you're going into the second half and thinking, I know it is not like you score, but I think, okay, it could be good. I think the big change second half was probably their goal. It changed the momentum of the game, and then at half time they had changed to 5-3-2, and I think that made it more difficult. Not that we didn't know they could do it, but of course, how do we get the message across to the players? Of course, we got a little bit on about the pressure and getting it right, but the goal meant we probably lost a bit of structure and coolness. It took more passes to get up into the right positions, cross it from the right area or produce from the right area instead of cross with your weaker foot or a difficult position and a shot from 30 yards, even though the crowd screamed shoot. I like the effort and the mentality, and I think it is huge actually. And I mean that to get a point on a night where it's not perfect, especially not in the second half. Now that is 2 times in a row in the Premier League we come back. I think that tells a lot about the players. Yes, we want free floating. That's another thing to note about Thomas Frank. He never says, instead of free flowing, he always says free floating. Which is an amusing little thing. Yes, we want more, and we did not hit our highest performance level today, but when you're down at 90 plus and you get a point, I think that's positive. It's a very long first answer, so sorry you had to hear all of that, but I always think it's really interesting to hear what he said. He says, because not everyone will read. I put out like a transcript of what he said, but I know not everyone reads that. If you want to hear a guy not speaking in a Danish accent at all, I'm your man. It was kind of fitting that Paulinho scored what was, I think it was the 8th goal of the day netted after the 90th minute, or the 90th and after, which I think is actually a record number in a single day in the history of the Premier League, I think. But yeah, it's fitting because Paulinho was one of the best players, if not the best player for Spurs on a day. He won more duels with 10, more tackles with 5 than any of his teammates. And he spoke after that really well, actually, in the club interview. He was asked about the goals, the goal he scored and the 3 goals he's had. And he said, look, I feel, first of all, glad to score these goals, but it's the coach. He's demanding me to sometimes in the game be more inside the box. And these goals happen because I'm there. I'm not too far from the box and I try to get the chances, which is quite interesting when you think about some people suggest that, Thomas Frank wants his team to be ultra defensive, but he's asking his most defensive of midfielders to actually be in the box as much as he can. Today I scored a good goal, but if you ask me if I would change the goal for the victory, for sure I will do it. He was pretty disappointed in the other stuff he said. He said it's a draw, but it felt like a loss, to be honest. I think we played a really good first half, and when we suffered the goal, we started to drop a lot, in my opinion. I think we didn't have the patience in the right moments when we needed to find a good way to score, and we need to be much more calm in these moments because it will be key for us. I think if we scored probably in the first half, the whole game probably would be much different. But yeah, it's a result that for me feels like a loss. And as I said before, that this is the game that is mandatory to win, especially in our home. Absolutely right. And that's the mentality I love. It should be mandatory to win every game at home. You should not be kind of going in going, ooh, maybe we're not going to come out with anything in this. They should be going in expecting to win and should be incredibly disappointed if they don't win any game at home, regardless of whether they've come back or not. I genuinely believe that. They need to get that mentality within this. You could see Romero at the full-time whistle. Thomas Frank was having a real kind of deep chat with him as he walked off the pitch. Romero is a bit of a mentality monster. He will be absolutely seething that they didn't win that game. And that is why he is a World Cup winner, a two-time Copa America winner, Europa League winner, finalissimo winner. Finalissimo winner. He has won a lot. It's the easiest way of saying it. And it was quite interesting. Another thing that Paulinho touched upon, and it is something that is noticeable in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. He was asked like where the patience needs to come from, and he kind of spoke a bit about the crowd and the atmosphere. And look, there is absolutely no doubt here that the blame for just 3 Premier League wins and 17 home matches can be laid squarely at the door of the players and the managers as well. But I do think the frustration manifests itself in the atmosphere in the stadium. I just think it does. As someone that is inside that stadium pretty much every single time, you sense it and you feel it. And the supporters, they do pay some of the top prices across Europe to watch a game of football, and they deserve to watch better, absolutely. But it also opens that whole debate, doesn't it? Are the fans there to push on the team, or are the team there to entertain the fans? And certainly, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at times can feel more like a quiet theatre, almost like with an audience waiting for the performers to earn their keep, rather than kind of this, roaring, ear-splitting, hellish place for opposition sides to have to step out into. As someone that has to go to a lot of these European games, I say has to, I enjoy going to a lot of these European games. As the fans, no doubt, that travel there are so many really hostile atmospheres we've gone into and the players have had to play in. And the Spurs Stadium, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, should be like that. It is huge. We've heard it. At its best, the noise is incredible. But it's just all too rare. And I think it's definitely a stadium where the frustration very quickly sucks the atmosphere out of it. And again, this is where I'm fascinated. Let me know in the comments. Do you believe it's the crowd's job to get the players going, or is it the players' job to get the crowd going? Because I absolutely can understand differing viewpoints on that. It's such a nuanced argument, because when you are paying that amount of money, I understand it. There's other elements to it as well. A lot of people will say to me that, there's certain areas where they maybe don't put enough of the kind of the singing, noisy fans together. And maybe you'll have fans that are there for the first time to see a game that might not be, how do I put this? Because I hate the expression tourist fans or day trippers and things like that. I don't like that, because I know so many fans from abroad that are as passionate, if not more so, and noisy than fans that live in the immediate area. But I think sometimes the groupings can affect how noisy that stadium is. I absolutely believe that. And they're doing this weird kind of mashup of different things before a game. I'm not saying that's really responsible. Someone has definitely listened to the whole can't smile without you thing. I'm not saying it's from me, but certainly feedback has got back to them that don't play it just before kickoff. It absolutely sucks the kind of oomph out of just before the whistle. Play it. They're kind of playing it a bit earlier now. Personally, I still think shove it at the end. It's a song for after a game to me rather than before a game. They had Duel of the Fates before Doncaster Rovers. It was so much better. La, la. I don't know what that was. It wasn't even doing Duel of the Fates. Dun, 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 dun. That was that one, isn't it? What I was going into. I'm very tired. Please excuse me. But I love Duel of Fates. Apart from the fact that I'm a massive Star Wars fan, it just is a blood-pumping, adrenaline-fueling kind of bit of music. I don't know whether there's a thing now that they can't play before Premier League games and you've got to play the Premier League music or something. I don't know. But certainly they used to play it all the time. I've seen lots of people suggest various things like Enter the Sandman, various tunes. But I don't think it's that. I don't think you should need that anyway, really, to kind of get the crowd going throughout a game. But like I say, let me know in the comments, whose fault is it? Is it a combination of everyone? That could be the answer. But yeah, he admitted that the unease in the crowd, Paulinho, he kind of said it does transfer to the players. He said, I think this is the environment as well, which creates this on the team. We need to push not just the players, but all the supporters as well, because we want to win the game. Like the supporters, nobody wants to win more games than us, for sure. The players, the staff, the coach, everyone, the supporters, of course. And we need to push us and not in these moments make sometimes the team more, how do you say, not stressed, but like a little bit more on edge, maybe. But I think it's normal. As a supporter, I understand sometimes these reactions as well, but we need to push us, not just the players, but as well the supporters, because we want to win the games and we need their support for sure to change these kind of games. I think that will be a key for the future. It's not the first time we've heard a player say this. We know that there's players that sometimes kind of feel the brunt of the fans and their feelings. We know that we've seen certain players really get it quite badly as well. Yeah, we're a funny bunch, Spurs fans. We can be absolutely brilliant at the best of times, and we can also be quite unhelpful at times as well. We can, yeah, look, that applies to all football clubs. Let's be honest. I felt one player who felt the frustration, got the brunt of it maybe more than anyone else, was probably Guillermo Vicario. Last night, particularly when he was rushing some of his kicks and they were like sailing out of play at times. Again, goes back to the old chicken and egg scenario. Was it Vicario's kicking that was causing the unease in the crowd, or was the unease in the crowd and the frustrations and their desire to just get the ball out there, does that kind of cause him to rush his kicks? It's like sometimes when a team tries to play out from the back, the fans are like, no, just hoof it up there. And they hoof it up there and it just goes to the opposition. And you're like, whoa, what'd you do that for? It's like, well, you told me to. It is. I think there is this chicken and egg scenario to it all. And Thomas Frank was asked exactly about that. Did he feel like the frustration kind of didn't help Vicario when he was trying to make his decisions with the kicks? And he said, I definitely think it's not easy. I need to look at the situations back. But at the top of my head, it looks like we could have also helped him a little bit more in those situations. Open up a bit more, give him more options. There were also one or two where he could have done better. But hey, that's part of it. It's not easy, but that's not to say he couldn't have done better. There was one early kick, actually, that Mickey van der Ven took. It was quite a clever one. It actually worked. Mickey van der Ven came up to take it. I think they all expected him to play a short pass, but he actually kicked it long as a keeper would. And because they had all pushed up, it left this big bit of space for, I think it was Richarlison to pick up. Richarlison had a tough game. It just didn't work for him. And that's one of my questions I asked after, actually. I said, are you missing the ability to bring or have on a Solanke, a Kolo Muani? I mean, it feels like Richarlison now he's going to play. He's going to be the man to play. He's the only one that can play. And I think he brings a lot, Richarlison, and I think he gets some important goals. But I don't feel like he's your regular week in, week out goal scorer type that's probably going to be a 20-goal a season player. I would love him to be, and maybe he will if he keeps fit this season. I just don't feel like he's that kind of guy. I would also say in his defence, the service into him was pants. He was not getting the ball into him too much at all. Another player who definitely could have done better on the night for me was Xavi Simons. He's kind of billed, and understandably so by myself included, as the kind of creativity saviour right now, because it's a squad that's missing creators like Maddison, like Kulusevski, but it is also missing those kind of final third players like Solanke and Kolo Muani. So Xavi wants to be the main man, but it kind of feels like Thomas Frank's going, okay, me the main man over there, and pushing him off to the left-hand side. It's going to look like the right two, isn't it? I don't know. I'm so tired. And I just feel like putting him out on the left, it's stunting his ability to play these lovely little through balls that he's capable of playing. And Richarlison, Richarlison would thrive on those. Someone like Solanke. This is why I so want to get Solanke back. And Cullen Moani as well. It is mad that Spurs, why, when they have injuries, are they always in the same positions? It's so weird. You'll have certain areas of the pitch that have got a million players available and other key positions that have got like one player able to play there. And I don't think, of course, it helps that Xavi is currently trying to adapt to the pace and the power of the Premier League, and that's absolutely right. And he does. I mean, he spends as much time bouncing off opponents and falling onto the floor as he probably does on the ball. And they kick him a lot. He's probably finding that as well. I'm sure he gets that everywhere. Dribbling players always get kicked a lot, but certainly those kicks are maybe going to be more frequent in the Premier League. And I said to Thomas Frank, I just felt like it was a game where he got no real rhythm in his play whatsoever. And he said, I think that's fair to say. I think Xavi, he had some good actions, also carrying the ball forward, and you kind of had to foul him 3 or 4 times. But there were a lot of situations where he was not sharp. I think that's fair to say. I think he would say the same himself, but I also think it's natural. You're coming into a new team, a new league, and to find that rhythm quickly is difficult. I also think, as we said the other time, I think we were very happy with the Brighton performance in many ways. I think the first half was positive tonight, also, offensive from Xavi, he's saying. But that free-flowing to have it, he actually said floating, I think I've changed it there in the quotes. Free-floating to have it enough, that we need to keep working on. And then there are just some days where we don't hit the highest level. And what I really like about Thomas Frank is he's a manager you can question the tactics of with him. Many of his predecessors, oh no, you could not question tactics. They would bristle at the mere suggestion that maybe they picked the wrong team or that a tactical decision was maybe the wrong one. You could kind of feel them looking at you, and this goes for any reporter with these eyes that are just kind of saying, I've got more coaching qualifications on one paragraph of my CV than you'll ever have in your entire life. And that's true. That's no doubt true. I don't know. I'm trying to think of any journalist that would be asking questions with like a UEFA Pro license under the belt. But I do think it's important that managers are held accountable, and we try to. And I think they should be able to explain their decisions without taking umbrage at it. And I'm going way back. I'm not just talking about... Postecoglou wasn't a huge fan of talking about his tactics, but going all the way back to Poch. Poch would get properly... That was the only times I'd see him get a little bit tetchy, was when you asked him about a tactical thing. He was great at explaining tactics. That's the weird thing. As long as you weren't questioning him, he would be terrific to explain. I think it was really unfortunate. It was just before I started covering Spurs. The guys that went on the pre-season tour with him, I think he did a big tactical presentation for them I think it was maybe Melbourne in 2016, because I just started covering Spurs just after that tour. And yeah, I was gutted because apparently he'd spent 45 minutes to an hour going through this big tactical presentation of how his team would be playing that season, which would be a huge help when you're trying to report on it. And that was the idea behind it. But in a press conference, if you asked about something, he just wasn't great about it. And player selection, I remember him getting all funny about Toby Alderweireld. Do you remember that little period after he came back from his hamstring injury when Davinson Sanchez was getting in ahead of him? He was really funny about that if you asked about it. But Thomas Frank he's well known as someone who will listen to other people's opinions. He may not agree with them and he may not want to implement them in any way, but he is very inclusive in the coaching staff, his players, and he will listen to us mere non-football mortals talk with him. And he was asked last night why he didn't play Xavi through the middle to create chances in a game where, let's be honest, you're playing the bottom side in the league. Do you really need João Paulinho and Rodrigo Bentancur both in that engine room of the pitch? They got Villa at home coming up in a little while. That's understandable. I can understand why in that game you would do that. Do you need to do that against Wolves? He didn't get annoyed. He didn't get irritated. Instead, all he took it as it was, a question. And he said, I will always look back at it. But a good old coach told me once that the lineup you picked, you did that for a reason. And you don't know what would happen if you pick the other one. Maybe you could have lost 2-0. So I need to go with what I believe in, of course. That's not to say I'm not watching the game back and not reflecting and thinking about, could we, should we? You never know. I actually think first half was quite good and we created enough. We would like to create more, but yes, actually, after I took Rodri out, you could say it didn't work because we lost the structure. So who knows? One thing is for sure, we need to do it a little bit better in the second half. So it's interesting that he's actually, in one sense, saying, well, you're wrong because as soon as we lost Bentancur, the structure went all awry. But he's actually also criticising his own decision to take Bentancur out of there because it all went wrong, which is quite even-handed. So he was asked, I think it was Tom Barkley, asked, I think I asked this a couple of weeks back. Is Xavi being played out wide because he's not up to speed yet with the Premier League? So it's less crucial, let's say, if he loses the ball on the flank than it is in the centre of the pitch. And he said, as I think he did to me back then, no, I don't think that. I think it's trying to get the right balance into the team. For me, also to learn the players, I think we need to learn about the players and find out how we can get the best players on the pitch at the right time. So that I'm, of course, looking into. I'm very aware that Xavi, he can play as a 10. He also got in as a 10 against Brighton because that was the third game in a week, and I think that was positive. I think today, when he got in as a 10, it didn't really work. And that was not only because of him, by the way. I think the whole team was out of sync in that last 35 minutes or something like that. But of course, I tried to look into what is the best midfield. I think it's fair to say both Rodri and João have been very good for us so far in the season, and Lucas has been fantastic. So you like to keep your players that are a little bit in the flow. I get it. I do get that. I wouldn't say Bentancur's been fantastic or very good in every game. I think he's had some good games and some off-the-ball boil games. I think Paulinho's probably been pretty consistent. And yeah, Berger's very good. Berger was probably Spurs' best player in the first half for me. Had a couple of really good chances. He had that fluff volley. He also did a terrific acrobatic volley, a bit Richarlison-esque, that went over the bar. And he was just really positive in his play. Second half, like the rest of the team, he kind of faded a bit. And the problem for me with him saying about Xavi not being particularly good when he moved into the 10 was that when he got the chance to be in the 10 and come in field, there wasn't this balance to the team because he brought Johnson on the right. And I think to accommodate that, had pushed Kudus to the left. And Kudus and Xavi just kept going into each other's lanes. They just didn't really work. And eventually, Xavi being ineffective was taken off and he was replaced by Odegaard, who's just even more ineffective. But look, as I said at the top, I think Spurs rescuing a point, remaining third in this early table was probably the main positive to take away from the game. And like I said, I think probably the ones that came out with credit, Bergvall, Paulinho, I thought Mickey van der Ven had some really nice interceptions. I thought Romero battled away. And of course, Tel and Sarr's late contribution, I think you've got to add in there as well. I thought Jed Spence probably keeps the theory that I've got going that he is better on the left than the right in this team. I just feel like his delivery isn't good enough into the box. His crossing isn't good enough. And that's something that, he's still a relatively young fullback, so he can work on it. But I feel like that's why the left suits him, because he can kind of cut inside and play low balls across the box. Whereas from the right, he's trying to whip those balls into the box and he's just not particularly great at it. And I think similarly, Destiny Doggy on the left-hand side was getting to some really great positions, but then he kind of just chooses the wrong things to do in those moments, whether it is playing a low ball or a high ball that doesn't reach anyone, or he's got a tendency to just hesitate for a split second before playing a pass, and that allows someone to just get a block in or a tackle. I would love to see the stats for how many corners he wins, because I would imagine it's pretty high, and that's because he's delaying his pass. Could be completely wrong, but it's just a feeling I have. And yeah, Vicario, he didn't really have much to do. I think he had one save other than the one before the goal. And I do feel like that his involvement in the goal is going to be overanalyzed. I think, personally, it's just my opinion, and people I've noticed on social media have a completely different opinion. For me, in real time, it's a reaction save. And I think he does well to save it. It's just unfortunate he tries to push it away, and Paulinho is right in the position where he's trying to push it away, and it bounces back. I have seen people saying, and I absolutely understand it, because I think in slow-mo, it looks like he should have pushed it even wider, or even could have caught it. But again, that's slow-mo. We know football doesn't take place in slow-mo. I think in real time, I think he kind of did what he was expected to do. It was more just unfortunate in that respect. But I think, I just feel like it's the Vicario thing. I think because he's not perfect and he has certain elements to his game that do need a lot of work on. I think even though he's a little bit older, he's kind of come into the game at the top level quite late. I still think there's a lot of stuff he's still learning. And yeah, his kicking and his distribution was a bit rushed and messy. But yeah, I just feel that's a little bit harsh. There's definitely been goals that Vicario you could say has been culpable of. He should have done better. There's been a few this season. I feel like that one is just a bit harsh if you watch it in real time. But yeah, look, the point we'll have to do. That's all that we have to show for this game. They sit 4 points off the leaders Liverpool, who finally lost their maximum start to Palace, who are unbeaten and second, a point ahead of Spurs. Thomas Frank, another little quote for you. He said, I think if you look before the game, you would say that there was a good chance for us to win. But I also said it before the game. We haven't beaten Wolves the last 5 times. No, actually 6 times in a row. And also a team that have lost the first 5 matches of the season, there's a time when they will get something. And as I said before the game, they've played very, very even games, so it's never easy. That said, I hoped and believed if we hit a top performance, we would win. We didn't hit a top performance. I think we hit an average performance. But you do that sometimes. We got a point on a day when not everything's worked, and then we move forward. And that is a key thing. This was kind of the issue last season, was that Spurs were losing games they weren't playing well in. Whereas now they're nicking a point, and that's an upgrade. That's a better way to be, of course. I know the situation is different, the circumstances are different, all of this, and we're early in the season. But it's quite interesting because he's had a far better start to the season. He has at Brentford and Brøndby and places like that. But it's still a team that's very much being moulded and shaped, and there's no real time to dwell on this display either, because time for Norway for a rematch against Bodø Glimt on that artificial pitch at the Aspmyra Stadion. They're not going to be easy. They're enjoying their first ever Champions League proper appearance. I think they played in the qualifying games before. And they gave a lot of teams some tough moments last season. They're a very organised side. Spurs, when you look at it, kind of managed to score 5 goals across 2 games against them. But I guess this is a different Spurs, different manager, and they need to create, they need to score. This is a one-off game in terms of facing Bodø Glimt. And it did feel like a bit of a cup tie there with the crowd, and it's going to be the same again as we head off to north of the Arctic Circle. I think Spurs need to quickly find their rhythm, and they need to stop sliding back into being this team that is always looking to come from behind, because we've seen that over recent seasons, recent managers, where they became this team that's always having to fight from behind, and they don't want to be that side. I can't remember what the stat is, but the home thing of going 1-0 down is ridiculous. I think there's only 2 or 3 sides that are worse than them at home for going 1-0 down in Premier League era. It might be the last 2-3 years. It's not good. It's just not a good stat. For me, Dr Tottenham, he needs to hang up his He needs to hang up his white coat and retire. Dr Tottenham, please do. He's been helping others out for far too long. It is time to, please, just there's a little coat rack. Put the white coat on there. I'm sick of Dr Tottenham. It is one of those expressions, unfortunately, that is absolutely bang on, because it just keeps happening. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? again, we talk about manifesting in the fans, and I'm no different. I said myself at the start, I went into this thinking, ooh, as Wolves, this is going to be difficult. We don't have this belief, and that just feeds. It's like a never-ending kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, like I said. I'm not saying it's our fault, but I think the players maybe believe that as well. But how does it get fixed? I don't know. I'm the manager. But answers on a postcard or in the comments, please. I will forward them all on to Thomas Frank, care of Tottenham Hotspur. Right, time to head off because it's absurdly early in the morning. And yeah, I've got an early flight on Monday off to Norway, connecting via Oslo to get to Buda. I'm looking forward to going back there. It was a very cool place. Thankfully, we're not doing it in January when we'll be covered in snow. But yeah, I'm hoping. I think the weather last time I looked was okay as well. I'm sure there's not many going out there because it's only a small stadium. I think it only holds. It's maybe 8,000-9,000. I'm trying to remember now. It wasn't a lot. So obviously the allocation for Spurs fans becomes very small. But it's such a small town. It's quite cool that you'd walk about 10 yards and you'd see a Spurs fan. So lots of great chats to be had. Press conference will have. I'm trying to think who the player might be. I've got a feeling it could be Lucas Bergvall because of the kind of whole Scandinavian nature of it. I would imagine. Could be wrong. It's just my guess. And of course, Thomas Frank. They're not actually training out there. There's a bit of a pain in the backside for us that are flying out there. They're training at Hotspur Way on Monday morning and then flying out for that evening for the press conference. So yeah, it's quite a late press conference. I think it's 7:30 their time, which will be 6:30 your time, I think. And then yeah, late one the next night for us over there. But hopefully they can keep their Champions League journey starting strongly and get up that huge league table. Right, time to go. Time to go to sleep. And the next time you hear from me will probably be. I'm trying to remember. I think I might end up coming back quite late on Wednesday night, so it might be Thursday morning. I have to do one, but we'll have a chat. We'll talk about it all, and then we got straight into a press conference, and Leeds away, and then the international break. Although maybe it's one of those we just need a little. Maybe we'll see. Leeds away is not going to be easy either. It really isn't. The noise that they create there, that's interesting. That's another kind of atmosphere. I've seen both sides of Ellen Road. I've seen it absolutely buzzing, and I have seen it when they turn on the team as well, and the manager. So, yeah, fingers crossed. Spurs can kind of keep this little run of unbeaten since the international break, isn't it? Yeah. 3 wins, 2 draws. Am I right? I think, and hopefully keep that going until the next international break. But right, I've got to go. I've got to go. I need to sleep. And you're all waking up and hopefully watching this. So yeah, time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.